Good morning, everyone. Brent Simon here, just catching myself out. Went live without realizing I'd gone live. I'm happy to take all your questions this morning, just as usual. For people from DV26, you probably won't know this, but I do a live session most weekends, usually on Saturday, but sometimes on Sunday. I live in California, so this is morning my time. And it's sort of late evening, I guess, in Europe, and as we're going further around the globe, it's sort of, I'm not quite sure what time it would be for everybody. Sometimes I try and time things to occasionally catch the people down under, and I try and mix it up a little bit, but this is fairly typical time. And I'll spend about an hour or so taking questions from you on DV lottery topics, and I'll try and be as kind as possible to the new people that obviously have got very basic questions. I totally understand that. So there'll be questions that have been answered a million times before, but because some of you will be new, you'll be asking those same questions again. So I'm normally pretty good tempered about that. So we'll see. So let's jump straight into it and talk about some of the questions that could be asked. Evans, you're asking about the Nairobi embassy. I think actually you probably know more about this than I do, Evans. I think you're one of the people in the Telegram channel. There was some encouraging and sort of somewhat sensible information given this week. Basically, it is possible that Nairobi restart their interviews, and if they do that, they actually have a very large capacity. They can actually go through cases very, very quickly. In 2022, which is one of the end of the COVID years, they were kind of forced to sort of perform very quickly. And in the last couple of months, last 2 to 3 months, they scheduled a lot of people. They scheduled well over 700 cases for the month of September of 2022. They had also done, I think, about 300 cases in July or June. I think it might have been June. They have the capacity. The question is, are they going to do that? And I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't have any inside information. But apparently their answers to people have been sort of changing just recently. And I think that that's probably fairly significant. They're not being, quite as blunt, saying we're too busy. They've changed their tone a little bit, and that might indicate that they actually are going to start taking some cases. But it's all speculation. We don't know. We have to wait and see. I don't have any sort of guaranteed inside information, Evans. All right. Ryan, yes, I'm doing well, thank you. Hope Nairobi will schedule. Yeah, me too. I hope they do. Nairobi, by the way, if they can schedule, for the last 3 months, let's say they do 1,000 cases, not every month, but over that 3 months, for example, they did 1,000 cases. That would make a big difference in Africa in terms of Africa being able to reach the capacity. And so that has a knock-on effect to everybody else in the world, right? Because if Africa doesn't reach its quota, then other regions actually will use some of those or could use some of those visas that go unused by Africa. So if Africa comes online, obviously it's going to be great news for everybody in that area in Nairobi, but it'll be bad news for people in other countries, perhaps in other regions. Okay, so there's always this sort of to and fro. It's just kind of the process, right? How do you think about Asia going to be current or not in the next upcoming bulletin or next? There's absolutely no reason why Asia would go current. There's way too many selectees. I understand that in some years Asia has gone current, but you have to understand the number of selectees that there are in Asia is it's stupid. Actually, all the selectees, DV25 is over selected. Let me show you something. Let me just bring up a spreadsheet here. I just want to show you how bad it is, because when people ask, will Asia go current, they're really not understanding. They're not paying attention. So let me just sort of pop this up. I was just working on this morning because I wanted to show something else. But this is the DV25 selectees column, right? That's the 131,060. The number of people selected in Asia is 23,198, right? Yes, it was a 17% decrease from the previous year, a big decrease in selectees from the previous year. However, it's still way too many people, right? There's only 8,500 visas available for Asia. So unless there had been some block to many people from Asia, for example, like Iran being banned, like as soon as Trump came in, right? There's no way that this number of people fit into 8,500, right? There's actually no way that 56,000 people, which is what this is, fits into for Africa. This is 56,000 for Africa. That doesn't fit into their quota of 23,000 either. But you can see the quota is almost 3 times. Asia is almost 3 times over selected. Okay. Whereas Africa is 2.3 times over selected. EU is about 2.2, 2.3 times over selected. OC is horribly over selected, 4 times over selected. South America is about 3 times over selected against, and I'm talking about over selection against the quota. Okay. Now, there are always going to be people that just don't even ever fill in their DS-260. There are going to be people that fit in their DS-260 and they get scheduled for interview and they don't turn up for their interview. There are people that do turn up for their interview, but they get refused at the interview or they get put on 221G. And some people make it through all of that funnel and they get through and they get issued, right? Now, those people, the people that don't respond in the first place, or they respond but they don't show up, we can look at that historically year by year and say, okay, in Africa or in Asia, how many people don't even respond, right? How many people never, we don't know that number precisely, by the way, because if you don't get scheduled, you look like you didn't respond. But how many people respond, fill in their DS-260, get scheduled, and then don't turn up for the interview? We can more accurately sort of count that. There are things that we can know, but I can tell you that when most of the regions are 2.2 or at most 2.5 times, and Asia is nearly 3 times over selected, that's a problem for Asia. It is probably there's no way OC goes current. There's no way South America goes current. But the next region that I think wouldn't go current is Asia. Europe, there's no mathematical reason why Europe should go current, but it might. Now, the only region realistically that I believe could go current is Africa. The reason for that is because they've been trying to encourage Africa to take its quota, because the Africa quota falls to the other regions when Africa doesn't fill its quota, and so they keep doing everything they can. Look at these. This is the percentage increase or decrease from 2004. There was a 17% decrease in selectees from 2004 to 2005, right? In Asia, 13%, nearly 40% in Europe, 9% almost in Oceania, nearly 13% in South America. All the regions got less selectees, right? Less compared to the previous year, where there was nearly 143,000 people selected. There are less visas available in DV25 compared to DV24, 6% less. So these reductions make sense, right? But then Africa went up. Right now, Africa already had far too many people selected, but it did go current in 24. And so there's a possibility that in order to just desperately trying to make Africa use its quota, there's a chance they could just push that to current. Now, if embassies like Nairobi and Addis and Cairo, etc., had all performed better earlier in the year, that would be that possibility of Africa going current would have been less and less likely, because if they'd have worked better earlier in the year and issued more visas, then there wouldn't be the desperation need to push them current. But the more desperate the government gets that Africa should have its quota met, the more likely it is that Africa goes current. But that same thing can't be said for Asia, and probably not even for Europe. Okay, it's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. Okay, I'll come back to this spreadsheet a little bit because I want to answer a question if I get a question on it, which will be a DV 2026 question. Okay. Watching from Sierra Leone, awesome. Please, do you think Africa will schedule interviews on 33K? Accra. Yes, I think they probably will. I think they'll continue to schedule. The question I have is how many will they schedule? They seem to be, a two-headed monster in terms of Accra. They either schedule a pathetic amount, 20 or 30 cases per month, which is not enough, or they push the boat out and schedule lots. I don't know which Accra is going to show up month to month. Is which Accra is it? It's just a bit weird. What about 25K for EU? You still have a chance. I actually think EU will have a little bit of a Hail Mary. Now there's I think it's about 60% issued against quota right now, but I think Africa is probably going to go current because I think they've already screwed up Africa. I think that they'll underutilize the quota for Africa, and Europe typically becomes the biggest beneficiary of that. Not in every year, but typically. And Asia can be a beneficiary, by the way. Asia could, exceed their quota quite easily. Their quota is about 8,500 this year in Asia. And there have been years, very recent years, where they've been issued with almost 10,000 visas. So, Asia does, eat from the plate of Africa quite happily. Oh no, that's fine. So, it is possible that my daughter's out driving my car, so that's why I actually sort of wanted to see the phone call I just took. 16-year-old daughter driving a $65,000 car. Anyway, where was I? I got kind of distracted with that. So yeah, Asia can eat from the plate of Africa. Europe can eat from the plate of Africa, but Europe being a bigger region, when it eats well, right? And that's the possibility. So 25K for EU, I certainly wouldn't be giving up hope if I were you. I think that's a distinct possibility. I hope to see the next visa bulletin for EU start with a 2, maybe a 21,000, maybe even a 22,000. But that would be a nice jump. And then that means they're within reach of going to 25, 26,000, the VB after that. And in the final VB, they can either shoot for the moon or not. That will be up to them, right? We'll have to see. What's hope for 2026 unluckiest? I don't know what you mean by that. The hope for DV26 with non-selectees, people that saw the message in DV26 that says has not been selected, which is what 99% of the 20 million people that enter see, right? Most people see that message has not been selected. You have to understand that nobody should be making a plan to win the DV lottery, certainly not in regions other than Oceania. In Oceania, you can almost make a plan to win the lottery because the selection percentage is so much higher there. But in the rest of the regions, it's not a plan. It's an incredible, joyous, wonderful, amazing event, right? Because your chance of winning the lottery in most regions is once in 100 years, right? So it's not likely you're going to win. Now, there is one sliver of hope each year that people carry, and that's that there would be a second draw. But if you look at the DV poll that we're conducting, DV26 poll, let's have a quick look at that. If you look at the poll that we're conducting, there's already clear indication, in my opinion, that we've got fairly high number of selectees. Okay, it's difficult to be precise about that, and I will talk about that in a minute. But if we look at the numbers here, we can see that we've got selectees up to about 105,000, and then we've got one guy, I think, between 110 and 114,000. That could be a mistake, but this seems to be fairly reliable feedback that we've got selectees in the 90, 95, 100,000, and that means that, to me, it's fairly sensible to believe this selectee prediction here, that we're seeing case numbers in the early 100,000 range. Okay, that doesn't look weird to me for Africa. If we look at Asia, looks like we're going to have selectees up to about 27, maybe 28,000, something in that region, in terms of case numbers assigned. In EU, looks like we've got a few people up to about 46,000. Actually, it looks like we've got people up to about 49,000. Zarthisius added this little bit of text there to show us what that bucket means, because the buckets are in 5,000 buckets. So, you know, Oceania looks like it's up to about 34,000 or so, 33,000, 3,300. And South America, we haven't got enough responses to even, you know, call that genuine, but looks like there's people in the sort of 4,500 bucket, yeah, up to 4,600. So the poll is interesting. If you haven't added your number, you're a DV26 selectee, please do go to the poll. It's at dv26poll.zarthisius.xyz. And if you can't spell that name Zarthisius, believe me, you're going to learn how to spell it this year, because that guy and the data he provides is incredibly important to us. Okay, so if you're a 2026 selectee, you're non-selectee, has not been selected, then your only remaining hope is a second draw. And a second draw sometimes happens in September or October, but it only happens in years where they've under-selected the number of selectees in the first draw. Okay, and the impression I'm getting from the case numbers I'm seeing is not an under-selected year. If we were seeing much lower case numbers, you know, then I would feel, okay, that could be an under-selected year, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like an over-selected year again. Okay. All right. Ram, missed you too. Waiting for VB for July. Yeah, that will be out this week. Yusuf, will DV26 also have 52K visas like the DV25, or still not confirmed? It is confirmed. Yes, it'll be about that. In theory, it would be 500 visas more, theoretically, because there was a new law introduced a couple of years back that began to impact in DV25. And in that first year, they allowed up to 3,500 visas to be taken for another program, taken from the quota, that we have in DV lottery. In the second and subsequent years, ongoing, they're going to take 3,000, up to 3,000, depending on the number of visas that they use in this other class, right? Now, in reality, it actually only sort of worked out that we lost about 3,000. So it came down to about 52. And I think 52 will be the approximate number that we'll have in DV26 as well, and ongoing. Okay, so yeah, it is lower. Okay, Algeria 55.4K, DV25. Any hope? Yeah, you got some hope. It's obviously a high number. You got some hope though. Okay. How about Russia? Is anyone there got it, or it's not possible? Yeah, people in Russia get selected all the time. It's a high selection country. Hello, Mr. Simon. I hope you're doing good. I want to ask about the 50K case number from Morocco. Is it possible to get an interview? Okay, now we have to introduce to new people who don't understand my penchant for murdering angels. Every time one of you gives me a number, without giving me the information I need to know, I'm going to kill an angel. Okay. That's just the way it's got to be. And I've killed a lot of angels in the past. So, and I'm happy to do it, right? If you give me a number and you don't tell me your region and year, so you're telling me from Morocco, but I don't know if you're 2025, 2026, right? So the way to tell me a number is you put your year, 2025 or 2026, your region, AF, EU, etc., and then the case number range, 50K, right? I need all of that information. Otherwise, I can't answer your question and I have to kill an angel. So that's one angel so far, right? Let's see who else wants to test me. Hi, Simone. Simone is a girl's name. I'm quite clearly not a girl. Come on, right? Simon, okay? Simone is a girl's version of the name. I hope you're doing well. If the country of eligibility is wrong, even though I have the nationality of the country, I had no chance during the interview to get the green card. S93. So this depends which are the two countries involved. I had a case that I answered this morning. Let me explain how I answered that case. With this particular person, his mum was born in Ukraine and his father was born in Yemen. His mother and father, funnily enough, are both green card holders and live in the USA. But he was born in Yemen, okay? So this is a young person, relatively young person, needs a green card of his own. He's born in Yemen. His father comes from Yemen and his mother comes from Ukraine. For some reason, he thought he could use the parental exception to choose the country of chargeability based on his parents' country. However, the problem with that is that the only way that works is if your parents were in a third country that neither one of them is a national of, and they were there in this other country temporarily. So if his mum was born in Ukraine and his dad was born in Yemen, he could have, and let's say he was born in South Africa, he could have said, I don't want to be chargeable to South Africa because that's Africa region, and I want to be in Europe or I want to be in Asia. He could have charged to either Yemen or to Ukraine. However, he was born in Yemen and his father is from Yemen, and so he can't say that he was only there temporarily. In fact, he then spent a number of years in school in Yemen and so on. So he can't say he was only there temporarily in Yemen, and the temporary nature of where he was born is important. Okay, and so in that case, this young man has chosen Ukraine for his country of chargeability. Because of that, he's got a European case number. He's got an EU case number, and he will be disqualified at the interview if he chooses to go to the interview. He can get interviewed. His DS-260 will be processed. And some people will say, oh, well, KCC processed my DS-260, and if I was going to be disqualified, they shouldn't have done that, right? And so it's an indication that they're going to approve me. So some people falsely, blindly go into an interview where the outcome is absolutely certain they're going to be disqualified. And they do that because they think that KCC had some sort of obligation to tell them that they were doing the wrong thing, which is absolutely not correct. KCC have no powers of adjudication. They cannot tell you what is going to be the outcome in your case. They cannot tell you. They can't advise you. All they'll say is the consular officer will decide that, right? And so you'll go along to your interview, you'll pay for your medical, you'll pay for your interview, and within a few moments into the interview, they'll go straight into this, why did you choose Ukraine? And this young man will say, I chose the country of my parents, I thought that was okay, and it'll be denied immediately within a few seconds of the interview. So hundreds of dollars lost and a lot of emotional energy lost. So I'm, when people ask me about this, I'm quite blunt. Now, in your case, S93, even though you called me Simone, I will happily give you an opinion on your case if you either put your details in, where were you born, where your parents from, and so on. Did you charge through your parents, or did you just make a mistake? And if you make a mistake and it's within the same region, those cases can sometimes be okay. But if you make a mistake that is in a different region, then you're in a totally different draw, a totally different lottery, and you will be disqualified. Okay. How's the embassy of Casablanca doing? No DV25, no 2NL yet, AF23K. Have a look at the data. I've made it really clear how to look at the data, and it's so easy now. Zarthisius has made it incredibly easy for everybody to know. So this question should become more or less redundant. You shouldn't need to ask, really. Thanks for your work, sir. Any updated view on the chance of DV25 AF65K for AOS? I'm worried about the time left if I'll make it. Dale, I was just asked a similar question this morning about AOS. So let's take this in two parts. How likely are you to go current? I think you're quite likely to go current. I think what's going to happen, I mean, it's all speculation, right? We don't really know what the government will do. But I think what will probably happen is the next visa bulletin will move from 42,500 for Africa to about 50,000, roughly. And then we could see the visa bulletin after that go to maybe 58,000, maybe 60,000. And in the final visa bulletin, they either go to a number like 70,000 or 75,000, which is a push, or they might just make the region current. It'll be something like that. That's, I think, what's going to happen in Africa, because they're not getting enough people issued right now. They're not getting enough people scheduled in Africa in particular. So, so I think that's possible. Let's talk about AOS, adjustment of status. The final visa bulletin for DV25 will be published in July of 25, right? This is always the way. The final visa bulletin that talks about September interview eligibility is going to be published in between the 8th and the 15th of July. You should have your AOS package ready to be sent immediately upon that visa bulletin being released. Because if it says, a number higher than your number, then you're immediately able to submit your I-485 and the other papers with that. You can submit that immediately for adjustment of status. It's called the early filing policy. So even though you won't be eligible for interview until September, you submit in July. And if you do that, if you take advantage of that early filing policy, you give yourselves an extra sort of 6-7 weeks or something, and that makes a big difference. That makes it a lot easier to get approved by the end of September. I have also seen AOS cases that there was one year where this person thought they were being ever so clever, and they used a lawyer to make sure that their case was okay. But the lawyer had no freaking clue what they were doing. They didn't understand about the early filing policy. So this lawyer said, we can only submit the I-485 on the 1st of September. And so this buffoon lawyer nearly effed up the case of this person. Now, that person, whose I think their documents were received about September 2nd or something, that person did make it, as I remember, and was approved before the end of the month. So despite the lawyer's stupidity, they made it through. So it is possible to get an AOS case through in time, but it's far better if you use the early filing policy, right? Give yourself that extra few weeks. So good luck with that, Dale. I hope it works out for you. Okay, let's AF57K Cameroon, please say something, please. Something. Is that what you wanted? Vague questions get vague answers. Hi, Simon. Good evening by my time, watching from Cameroon. Just want to say thank you so much for the information you've been putting out there. You're very welcome. Hi, Simon. Why Nepal region second letter is hold? Visa bulletin is updated for 8,000, but second letter is hold. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in Kathmandu particularly. It's a good embassy with a very high capacity. So I wouldn't be panicking if I were you. Let's see what they do in the last 3 months. It could easily get sorted out. My case number is AF22K, submitted DS260 on December 22nd, 2024. Quite late. Embassy Abidjan. Been left for scheduling twice. Don't know whether higher cases are being above me in the AV queue. Well, yeah, you caused yourself your own delay by submitting quite late, right, in December. I'm not quite sure why you waited until then. But that would have meant potentially that cases above your number would be ahead of you, because if a higher number case that is current is fully processed before your case is fully processed, they can be added to the AV queue. It's called the queue of people in AV status. So AV queue, long form of queue, right? The AV queue is updated once a month, right? So all the cases that are current and DS260 processed are added to this queue of people in AV status. And they're added into the queue. They're sorted numerically in that queue as they're put into the queue. But once they go in, they don't jump ahead of people in the queue from previous months, etc. And so the next month, people that are added to the queue will be ordered within their own little group. Within that month, they'll be ordered numerically. So low case numbers in that month have an advantage. But again, those low case numbers don't jump ahead of the previous month's or any previous month's selectees, right? So there is a numerical advantage being applied, but it is only applied within each month that they add the cases to the queue. Got that? That's how higher case numbers can get ahead of lower case numbers in some cases. You know, and it depends on whether the embassy is backlogged or not. It's a little complex, but I've produced videos that explain that. My famous little cotton video with beads and stuff. I love that video because I think it really sort of it explains that so well. You know, so go find that video. I can't remember what it's called now, but go find that video. I did that probably a year ago or something, and it's still absolutely correct. Okay, finally, the DS260. Is it a must to provide a permanent address to receive the potential PR, SSN, PR, permanent residence? Yeah, the green card. What if the candidate doesn't have one? Okay, so a couple of things I'll say. The green card and the social security number are two very, very important documents. You don't want them to get lost, okay? So when you choose the American address that you put in there, the ideal situation is that you use a family member's email address that you can really trust, or a friend of a friend. But trust is important in terms of receiving those two documents for you. Your social security number by itself can be traded on the black market, right? The green card is very valuable in terms of the black market and also in terms of someone just trying to assume your identity, okay? So those two documents are not to be messed with. You need to be sure that wherever they're sent, they're going to be trusted. You can trust that person, right? Now, to that end, because I understand that some people are going to be in a position where they can't get anybody that they can trust, I've made an address and a receiving holding service available. So I've set up a mail address which I can receive green cards and social security numbers at. I can hold those documents for people, and then when they are in America, I can send those documents via FedEx to be picked up or delivered to an address, or to be picked up at a FedEx office. So I'm working that out now. I've got a few people going through that that process right now, and that is available to you. But I'm going to charge for that service, and if you've got someone who it's going to be $80, so it's not the end of the world. But it's you know, it might be something you would prefer to, you know, not incur that expense. In which case, get a family member or a friend or anyone else that you can trust. But trust is the key. Okay. You want to make sure that you can trust that person. So you can put in an address when you're filling in the DS260. You can put in any address as long as you remember to update that at your interview. And your final chance to update that is actually as you're entering America. When you've been approved, you're entering America for the first time. You get one more chance where you can change that address. But generally speaking, you want to put that address on earlier if you can. Okay. As a 2026 DV selectee, can I buy a USPS postal address if I can't find a physical one? Physical or physical? Hassan, same answer really. it's difficult for you to buy an address in America as an outsider, right? And it's also important that that address will be delivered to you. It has to be a physical address. It can't really be, some of these virtual services and that sort of thing, because the green card and the social security number, more the green card, is such a highly rated piece of physical mail that the post office know they're only supposed to deliver that to certain types of addresses. And so, you have to be a little bit careful. You can take your own chance if you like. It's up to you. But if I were you, I would rather, if I were you, find a friend or a family member, or if you have to, a friend of a friend, right? But if you can't do that, then maybe you should consider my service. That's up to you. Okay. What are your thoughts of the EU region? Will there be a quota problem, and what do you think the final cutoff will be? Yeah, I sort of talked through this earlier. Now I don't know. I don't know exactly how it's what the cutoff is going to be. I think we're going to have to wait and see, particularly in Europe, because it depends on what happens in Africa, and so we'll have to wait and see. But my earlier estimates were that the risky range started around about 25, 27 and went up. But I was thinking originally thinking the likely number for EU is around about, I think it said 28, 29, 30. That would be the sort of the sweet spot. I think that's still very possible, but it will depend what they do in the next visa bulletin, which we'll see this week. Okay, so if they only increase by a very small amount this week, that would be a pretty dangerous indication. They have issued about 60% of the quota in EU already. They're doing pretty well. A lot of you don't understand. The numbers are not equivalent year to year. Okay, let me show you something. This is a good point to introduce this topic I wanted to talk about. And this will be helpful for DV26 people, as well as a discussion for Yusuf, who's got the 25 question, right? So I showed you earlier this spreadsheet, and it's pretty big. Yeah, it's probably big enough. That's good. I showed you this earlier, Yusuf. I'm just going to unplug you so that people can see me. And here are the selectees, for each of the regions in DV25, right? We don't know that equivalent number in DV26, of course, yet. We don't know these numbers, right? And we're going to see these numbers in the visa bulletin that will be published maybe in July, maybe more likely in August, and possibly in the September one. Not quite sure what they do yet, but we'll see that. I think it would surprise me if it was in the one that's published in September. So I think we'll see that in the September visa bulletin, most likely. That's what it was last year. It was called the September visa bulletin, which is actually published in August. So that's when we're going to know this information for DV26. Okay. But I wanted to show you something. You can see here that the highest case number for Africa is 86,709. You can see that for EU it's 41,009. These are case numbers, right? We can see the actual number of cases here, which is important, and we can sort of figure out what the density is, based on those numbers, right? So I always try and project the density based on, last year I did it based on the survey. The survey was accurate in some of the regions, inaccurate in a couple of the regions. For Europe, for example, it was pretty accurate. For Oceania, it was exactly accurate, within 5 case numbers. And so I was able to do a prediction for Oceania as early as October last year, because I had all the data I needed. I knew I had accurate numbers. I had an accurate number of selectees and so on. And so I could work out the number of cases. I was a little bit out on the number of cases compared to my projection, because I do that based on an assumption about what the derivative rate is, right? So even though we'll find out the number of selectees, we have to assume the derivative rate, right? And so that's kind of an interesting nuance. But what it means is you can get to a density number for, for each of the regions. And this is kind of an important thing that I want DV26 people to understand. So you see that number for Africa, 39.3%. That's the density. What is density? Well, if you look at the three big regions, well, all the regions rather, they all have a density number attached to them, meaning that out of every 1,000 cases, let's say in Africa, there's 393 cases, or 39.3%, that are actual cases. The rest of the cases are holes, right? They're gaps in between the numbers. Holes is what we call them, right? Now, I've created videos explaining why this happens, and it's very clear to us that it happens, and you can see it every year. But that holes rate differs. Now, in the three big regions, the holes rate also, the holes rate increases in later numbers, so the density rate drops. It's not a consistent number. But what that can lead to is some really sort of weird things going on. So let's look at Africa. Africa has got, let me just bring out this Word document. I did this earlier. In DV25, the maximum case number is 86079, and 34,080 cases are in that range, meaning that's the 39.3%, right? But look at DV24. There were less cases, 33,112, almost 1,000 cases left. But the maximum case number was 122,000, nearly 123,000. The holes rate was much, much higher, meaning the density was much lower in Africa in DV24 compared to DV25. And this is the thing, the holes rate changes from year to year. So somebody this morning was asking me, why is Europe 20,000 not behaving like Europe 20,000 last year? Well, the holes rate's different. That's the first thing. So you're trying to compare a number to a number in terms of case numbers. That's the wrong idea. It's the number of cases up to 20,000 that should be compared, not the case number, right? So in a year like DV26, it looks like we're going to have Africa 100,000, right? 105,000, something like that, as being the highest case number. But that doesn't tell us anything yet, without knowing how many selectees there are. You can't say that, oh, well, DV25 has maximum case number of 86,709. So if you're at 90,000 in Africa in DV26, you've got no chance, right? It's not as simple as that. You have to understand that the holes rate can differ tremendously. Just from one year to the next, it differed by basically about 30%. So 26% moved up to 39%, in terms of density, right? So when that happens, it means at this time of the year, to simply compare case numbers and compare to previous years and everything else, you're missing the point. You're misunderstanding all of this data. And the reality is, although you can tell me about your case numbers right now in the poll, and I hope you will, it won't actually give us the answers that you're expecting. Because we don't have enough information yet. We don't know how many selectees there are in DV26, okay? And until we know that, at least, we won't have a clue of, what the density number is, okay? We can predict it after we got that data, probably in August. Once we've got the selectee numbers, we can predict it for DV26. But that prediction won't be entirely accurate. We'll only know, for real, in January the 1st of next year. Okay, for DV26. But anyway, my friend Yusuf is a DV25, and so I think he's DV25 and wants to know about EU. We're just going to have to wait and see. This is a complicated process, right? And like I said earlier, just looking at case numbers and trying to do the math based on that, you're just misunderstanding and wasting your time, frankly. So we'll see. Okay. Do I have a chance as a 51K from Africa? I'm a little bit nervous about it. Ryan, I've got to kill. Are you the same guy from earlier? Ryan, did I have to kill to to, I don't know if you're the same guy. No, I'm hoping not. But anyway, that's another angel. Hi, Boos. Tell me more about Asia 13K. Which freaking year, Abdullah? 3 angels in a row. Come on. Talk about Kigali. Will they continue scheduling? What's your highest case prediction? I don't know. Have a look at Kigali. Go look at the data. Go use the technique that I showed in a video from about 4 or 5 weeks ago, where I showed you how to look at that data. You know, there's more useful questions I can answer if you're sort of not prepared to do a little bit of effort. Follow that video that I showed to show how you can assess your own embassy. Okay. Please, statistics for 2026 selectees. Yeah, I wish I could. I don't have any stats. I wanted to ask you if you have any info regarding the delay in DV embassy appointments at the US Embassy in Morocco. Case number is AF25, AF22506. Great that you've given the precise number there. You don't have to give the precise number down to the 506, by the way. You just XXX, those last 3 numbers. And it became current in the March visa bulletin. Yeah, I don't know what's going on at Morocco. You'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid. I don't know whether they intend to, pick up the pace for the last 3 months or not. I certainly hope so. Is there a second draw? Maybe we can be lucky. I don't think so, Good Lion, based on what I'm seeing so far. Although I shouldn't make assumptions based on the case numbers, for the reason that I just explained. It does feel like an over-selected year. It feels that way, right? We just have to wait and see. We won't know until probably August. July or August is when we'll know. Case number is AS756. Will Islamabad Embassy in Pakistan schedule an interview for me this month or not? So your DV25, I could work it out from there, but you've got to include your case number with the year now, people, because there are 2 years going on at the same time, right? Will they schedule for you? I don't know. I don't know. They're doing pretty well, but I don't know when you were DS260, when that was processed and so on. So I don't know. Do you think changing your occupation on your passport to your new passport is a problem? My old passport, my occupation was student, and the new one is doctor. I have an appointment June 16th. Oh my God. First of all, think like think like an American, right? Americans don't have their occupations on their passport. The idea of putting your occupation on your passport is a stupid idea. Your passport is for traveling. It's got nothing to do with the job you do. The fact that some countries still persist putting the occupation on the passport is like amazing to me. But the idea that any of you would think that that's an important piece of data when you're going for a US embassy is even doubly amazing. It's a completely pointless thing to put on your passport in the first place, right? Second thing is, you're a doctor. You're presumably highly educated. You're pretty smart, right? Lucky boy. It's pretty normal that you become a doctor after you're a student. I guess you were probably a medicine student, right? And so it's perfectly normal that you would have an old passport that says you're a student and then a new passport that says you're a doctor. That's not, that's not that unusual. If they were the other way around, if you were a doctor before you were a student, that would be kind of weird. But no, in this case, it's perfectly normal. So like none of this is a problem. And it's all making sense. And why you worry about these things, I don't know. So come on, lucky boy, you know what's up here, use it. I was put on administrative processing on 26th of March in USA Embassy in Monrovia. The CO took all my documents and did not give them back to me. What should I expect and how soon? Okay, first thing is, when you go to your interview, you are told to create copies of important documents that you don't want to lose, right? It says that right in the instructions. So the reason they tell you that is because they're going to keep your documents. So if you gave them your original birth certificate, for example, you've lost that. They're not going to give it back to you. It doesn't matter whether they approve you or deny you, they're not going to give you that back, okay? And so what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take copies of important documents. So take a copy of your birth certificate, take a copy of your marriage certificate, or divorce certificates, or anything else that you want to show. And you show the original document and you provide the copy and you say, I'd like to keep my original, please. Right? Here's a copy for your records. Right? That's what you do. You didn't do that, and so they've taken your documents. You're not going to get those documents back. In terms of the 221G that you're on, administrative processing, it's really properly named 221G now. I can't tell you when that will finish. I wish I could. The amount of time that people spend on 221G varies, and it depends kind of why they went onto that 221G in the first place. Is it that you were you're in Monrovia? I mean, yeah, I'm not quite sure whether you were local. If you go to a foreign embassy, for example, and you present education documents that they don't recognize, or documents of any source they don't recognize, they will often put you on 221G in order to verify those documents with an embassy nearer your location or nearer where you were educated or whatever. And that can take time, right? Sometimes they have to do background checking, not anything to do with your documents, but to do with you. It varies, right? And the amount of time they spend doing that varies. So I can't really tell you how long that will take. It depends partly on your education background, your travel history, you know, a number of factors. But it can even be as simple as you've got a name similar to someone that's on the no-fly list. It can be as simple as that, and they would want to do further background checking on you. Okay, let's start going through here. Wow, I'm really behind on questions. I can see one from Dale, which I answered right at the beginning, which means he, you know, I'm way behind. Okay. Hi, Brett. My case number for DV25 is 24K. Do you think I have any possibilities? I can't see a region in there, so I don't know. Is it 24K? Could be Asia. It could be Africa. It could be EU. Which is it? I don't know. I can't help you. I'm doing AOS EU 25 1. Okay, so you're DV25. I have to work things out from the context, right? I at least try. I'm doing AOS. Do you think any chances by the end of September? Yeah, you've got a good chance. You're more likely than not to become current, in my opinion. I think it will happen. It could be in June. I don't think it'll be this month, but I think it'll be in June. See, if I were you, I would be getting ready to submit my I-485 in June. It might be July, but you should be ready. Okay. Hi, Simon. Hope you're doing well. I was wondering if you have predictions for the upcoming visa bulletin. I'd really appreciate your thoughts. I think I've given as many as I've talked about it already in this live. 20K in Asia for DV26. I know anything can happen, but what's your predictions for now? My danger range for Asia started around about 17K. And even that looks generous now. So I don't think it's going to get to 20K, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay. What about AS 22K with no year? No idea. Probably going to have to kill another angel now. What about 12K in Asia? Oh my gosh. The angels are really struggling these days, aren't they? Please, do you think case number 42K upwards can be scheduled this coming month? Cameroon. Okay. I'm going to assume you're a 25 to try and spare the angels. And can it be scheduled in the upcoming month? I haven't looked at Cameroon to work out how much backlog they could have, how many cases per 1,000 and so on. So I don't know, but I've demonstrated how you can make that assessment yourself. And I please encourage you to do that. Okay. Why Morocco embassy going so slow in the previous 2 months? I don't know. Case number is 42K for DV26. Embassy Dakar. So do I have to assume Africa? Do you think I have a chance for an interview? It's too early to say, but if you're Africa, 42K in DV26, that's a pretty good number. You should be okay. Okay. Good day, sir. 19K, still no 2NL's Freetown Embassy. Yeah, we have to wait and see what they're playing at. I hope they fix things for the last 3 months. That's what I would say. Unlucky DV26. Okay. If my case is current in Africa, when I process my case, Asia will have interview. If my case is current in Africa, when I process my case in Asia, will I have interview? Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what you're asking here, Jimmy. You've got to ask really clearer questions than that. But if you're asking, if you're based in Asia, you're living in Asia, but you've got an Africa number, yeah, you can be interviewed in that Asia embassy, if that's what you're asking. I don't know what you're asking, really. DV26 might be discontinued by the current administration. No, that's bullshit. That's not going to happen. Wake up. I've been explaining that for a long time, right? The president of the USA has no powers with a magic wand to wander around changing things, and stopping the DV program. Can't just do that based on a whim, right? He can make it harder to process by insisting there's more processing done by the government agencies. He can do some things like that. He can put roadblocks in our way. He can ban some people from entering. He could do that. That's a possibility. What he can't do is just randomly decide that he's going to throw out a piece of law that when that law says you've got to run the DV lottery every year, he'd have to actually change the law. And that means that somebody has got to raise a bill. It's got to go through both houses and then eventually be signed by the president, right? And every year for the last, every term, the government terms are 2 years. So every term for the last, I don't know how many years, 10 years, some muppet in the government, usually from the right side, the Republicans, who are the right side but typically wrong, usually those guys raise a bill to kill off the lottery, right? Almost every year. It almost never makes it anywhere near passing through even the committee stage, which is before it goes to the House and before it goes to the Senate, for voting. It doesn't make it anywhere, right? And so there's always talk about it, and Trump will talk about it, but that doesn't mean that the law is going to change. And I've been explaining that I've been doing this 13 years, and for the whole period of time when I've been doing this, talking about DV lottery, this subject has come up. Doesn't matter which president, doesn't matter, who's in power, etc. This question always comes up. Someone is always trying to kill off the DV lottery. Now, it might happen sometime, but if it happens, it's got to be that process of law, and it's got to be done in an organized manner, which means that they wouldn't just stop a year in the middle of it running, which is the other reason DV26 is totally safe. And I think DV27 is totally safe as well, because that's going to be initiated in October, which is not so far away. Okay, so relax, chill out, it's fine. Okay, case number is 62K in Egypt. What do you expect? I don't know. Okay, my question is on maintaining status. Worked a job listed on my university's website, and I believe that it was on campus, and now DSO told me it was not. Will this affect AOS? Yeah, it will. You need to run this question by someone's mum in forums.immigration.com. She's the AOS expert for DV lottery cases. Someone's mum is her screen name. It's not her real name, of course. But go there, forums.immigration.com, and find the AOS for your year, and ask her that question. I think it's going to affect you because you broke the terms of your break the terms of your visa, as far as I understand what you're saying there. So yeah, figure it out with her, and trust her answer. Hello, Britt. I was unlucky on the DV 26. Will there be a second draw in Africa? Will there be a second draw is what you're asking. I don't think it's by region specific. I'm leaning towards no, but we'll have more information when we see the selectee numbers. Okay. Will DV27 be open to enroll yourself? Oh, when will? So that will be in October. And I would, if I were you, I had a nice interaction, a nice email from a gentleman that runs an agency, and he pointed out to me he was aware that I typically discourage people from, from going through agencies, and I really do discourage that. Even when they're good ones, it's not a good idea, because those agencies will sometimes open up their entry periods year round. But if you do an entry, if you provide an entry to an agent year round, that probably means giving them a photo of yourself that could be more than 6 months old when you go for interview, right? Sorry, no, when you go into the lottery, and that's breaking one of the terms of the process. So don't do that. Don't do that. That's kind of silly, right? It's a free process to enter. It's very simple. There's like 13 questions, and you take a photo and you submit the photo. I mean, do it yourself. But anyway, that will be in October. It'll run from the early October to early November. Every year, it's the same thing. Okay, thank you for these capacity building opportunities. My question is this: what is the forecast for the May visa bulletin? I think I already forecast it. I've spoken about 3 regions, right? AF94K, which must be a DV26, so I'll avoid the killing the angel. High, obviously, but I'm still going to submit the DS260. Yeah, hope dies last is one of the common things I hear. So yeah, you are a high case number. You could, let me just go back to this. let me just say, if you haven't submitted your DS260 yet, why don't you wait until August, right? If you wait until August, we'll know how many selectees are, and you'll have a better idea whether your case number is ludicrously high and therefore never going to get a chance, or whether it's worth having a go, right? But if you just blindly submit it now, what happens is that DS260 is an application for an immigrant visa, which declares immigrant intent. So if you don't get the DV lottery green card, and later you need a non-immigrant visa, that can affect that NIV process. The fact that you filed a DS260 can affect that, okay? So I personally would wait if I were you, B, but it's up to you. It's up to you at the end of the day. I can only tell you what I think I would do, I suppose. Thank you for the suggestion. I'm DV winner 25 from Nepal. I went through interview very easy. November 24. Nice. Now in high desert China. What? November 24 from Guangzhou. Now in high desert China. What are you doing in the high desert China? Get over to America. You're supposed to be over there. High desert China. Interesting. Okay, let's scroll through, see if there's some decent questions here. I'm going to ignore some of the repetitive questions, right? Does the photo play a huge role in getting selected? Yes and no. It's not like they're looking for pretty people. Clearly, they're not looking for pretty people, right? It's not that. And it's not that they judge you on your age or anything else like that. It's more the reverse, right? It's that the photo badly taken that doesn't meet the requirements, where you're looking off into that direction rather than straight into the camera, or or your head is like 98% of the whole image, and you haven't got the shoulders there, or you've taken the picture against a bright red background and you're wearing a bright red shirt and you've got red hair or something, and it's all blended into one. Bad photos can get those winners, those selectees, kicked out in the early part of the draw. I mentioned in the earlier part of this video that there is, in DV25, 39% is the density of cases for Africa, right? Meaning nearly 61% are holes. Where do those holes come from? They are people who are kicked out. They're numerically selected as part of the initial batch, but their cases are kicked out after they've been initially selected and before the results are announced, right? That's where holes come from. Now, why do they do that? Well, the largest number of those cases, of that 60%, is people that can't take a photo correctly. The photo is very, very risky if you get it wrong, okay? So it can damage your chances of getting selected. Absolutely. So you need to be careful with it. Okay. I'm working on that, by the way. How do we know why no Great Britain applicants have been selected? We don't know why. And we're not 100% sure that that's the case, although I'm very, very confident that is the case for DV25 at least. For DV26, it looks like, again, they've not selected any applicants. I mentioned I spoke with an agent this week. He's from Europe. And they had about 100 entries from the UK. I've heard from about 100 and something people on my video about the UK. So that's at least 200 people that are telling us I entered but wasn't selected. Okay, 200 people as a number isn't a very high number, but I would expect to have heard from at least one winner in DV25 or DV26 yet. And so far, I've had no verified winners, right? So if you're a UK chargeable DV26 or DV25 winner, please let me know. Email me your proof, which would be the selected letter, so that I can sort of put people's fears to rest. Okay, that would be awesome if you could do that. All right. And do I know why? I think they screwed up. Honestly, I don't think there's anything deliberate about it. I think they screwed up. I think the program, and I don't quite know how this piece works, but the program that selects cases has some sort of switch in it to say which countries could be eligible, right? And so if you entered from China or from Nigeria, which are, not eligible countries, the program has to be smart enough to throw those cases away, right? And somebody was supposed to set the switch for Great Britain to be included. That should have happened in DV25 and in DV26. And I don't think it happened. I think it was as simple as a screw up. And now it's going to be very difficult to prove because, State Department are not cooperating so far with all of my requests on this. And I know other people have asked. So maybe they wake up at some point. But if they don't just wake up, then the only real way to force change on this would be a lawsuit. The problem with that is that, let's say you've got someone who wants to bring a lawsuit. That person should only have had a 1 in 100 chance of selection anyway. So you spend thousands of dollars on a lawsuit to find out that you weren't selected, right? Would you do that? I don't know. If I can get maybe 100 people or 200 people together to file a lawsuit, knowing that if there were 200 people, maybe they all pay, I don't know, what would that be? Maybe they all pay $100, right? And that's $20,000, and that's enough money to give to a lawyer and say, hey, fight this case for us, find out who is selected and restore our opportunity. Somehow, do the draw for GB applicants so that we can get some of those case numbers. Using those holes, right? Using those whole numbers, distribute those whole numbers. That would be my preference, because I don't want to cause a redraw for DV26. That would be unfortunate, right? Really bad. But there's a way that they could fix this and use the whole numbers. Okay, so maybe if those 200 people got together and had the lawsuit, maybe that would be the right way to do it. But barring that, barring something like that, what else is going to happen? Nothing will happen. And so I don't know. I've spoken to a couple of lawyers about it. I could find out the cost and see if we can do kind of a GoFundMe thing. Frankly, I'd happily put in a couple of $1,000 to find that out. Personally, I'd do that. And if people wanted to contribute maybe $50 or $100 each, and we had enough people, maybe we could find out. But it's going to take a lawsuit, and a lawsuit doesn't happen for $5,000. It's going to take more than that, right? So, that's the reality of it, right? Okay. My wife doesn't want to give their photo for submit the lottery. What to do? Don't enter the lottery. Completely pointless entering the lottery if you don't have a photo. Now, If your wife doesn't want to give the photo to submit to the lottery, I think what your wife is saying is they don't want to be in the lottery and they don't want to get a green card. They don't want to go to America, right? You need to have that conversation. I'm sorry, I don't want to be a marital guidance counselor here, but you need to find out why, right? That's the conversation you should be having. And if you then realize that you are not going to be with your wife when you go to America, isn't that going to change how you feel? Or are you happy to just leave your wife behind? I mean, I don't know. What, that's a good conversation to have, right? Has the number of selectees for DV26 been released yet or still not yet? No, in July or August, it'll be released. Can Africa become current in one of the 3 bulletins? Yes. Next question. My wife got selected for DV26. We got married after the application process, and I am not included in her application. Is she going to get the green card alone, or I will get it as well? You both will get it if you fill in the DS260s. She has had a significant, important change to her marital status. She has to tell the truth on the DS260, and so she has to list herself as married. And she has to list you as her spouse. There really is no choice about that. You can't pretend to be single and go through this process when you're actually married. You can't do that. So when she does that on her DS260, she can use the add applicant button and create a DS260 for you as well. There's no risk in that. As long as you have a genuine marriage where you're actually truly married, there's no risk at all in that. So, go ahead and do that, and you'll both get the green cards. It's fine. When they publish the selectee numbers, they are fully aware that that number is going to grow. I call it the derivative growth rate. But that number will grow. People will get married. People will have babies. There may be, there's all sorts of things. There may be some deaths as well. But generally speaking, the population of the DV winners grows rather than shrinks, because we're talking about a young population. And so those people are having babies and getting married and so on. And so the number grows. And it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Okay. Do we need to bring documents to the medical examination? Sometimes it's good to bring some documents. Yes, proof of previous vaccinations, for example, would be one. If there's any particular medical history you think might be relevant, treatment for TB, for example, or something like that, you should take that to the medical. Yep, good question. The AVQ, it favors case number or DQ date? Okay, again, watch this video, but the AVQ is added to each month. Within that batch of cases they're adding in each month, they're numerically sorted from lowest to highest within that month, right? But then, month number 3, the DVQ, the AVQ is being added. They're sorted numerically. But month number 4, those numbers are sorted numerically within batch, for month number 4, and the early numbers don't jump in front of batch number 3. Does that make it clear? There's a whole video that explains this and explains it beautifully well. So yes, there is a favor. There is a favoring of case numbers, but not completely, right? Please, your vision and perspective about visa bulletins in Asia in July 25. I think I've talked about that. Let's see. I'm just trying to find questions that are not like all the questions I've already answered. Let's see. Please, Britt, if your mum is from Cameroon and dad is from Nigeria, but you used your mum's nationality to play the lottery, which city's passport do I use? This is which country's passport do I use? The one you've got. So the thing is, well, right. So if you were a Nigerian and your dad is Nigerian, if you were born in Nigeria, it doesn't matter how many passports you've got, you're going to be disqualified because you chose Cameroon as your country of eligibility, right? Probably. Now, if you were born in Cameroon, you're fine. But if that's the case, I'm wondering why you're telling me the story about your mum and your dad, right? And it doesn't, with regard to the passports, it doesn't matter which passport you present. It makes no difference. The passport or your current nationalities is not the point. The point is, where were you born? Your dad was born in Nigeria. Your mum was from Cameroon. You cannot claim to be, if you were born in Nigeria and you said to yourself, hey, I'm Nigerian, but I can enter through my mum's country of birth, Cameroon. No. In that case, you couldn't, because your dad is from Nigeria, and you therefore couldn't claim that they were only there in Nigeria temporarily, right? So you've left out the critical pieces. Where were you born, and where have you said you're chargeable to? I'm assuming you've probably said Cameroon, and I'm assuming you're probably born in Nigeria. In that case, you're going to be disqualified. In reality, okay. And I wouldn't even bother going to the interview. I wouldn't even bother submitting the DS260. It's so certain that if it's what I just said, you will be disqualified. There's no doubt in my mind. And it's entirely your right to go for the interview, but it's just throwing money away. So, I wouldn't. Okay. Chenga's, my embassy is Bangkok. Do you think it's possible to get an appointment? Maybe. We'll have to see. New selectee AF94K, obviously a high number, but still going to submit the DS260. I think we talked on this B already. Can I edit my DS260 after I complete it for DV26? Yes, you can. Few years ago, there was a rumor got started that unlocking and editing your DS260 causes delays, and categorically just causes delays. That is now and was then understood to be bullshit. It's not correct. There is no automatic delay cause to cases because they unlock and correct things. But yeah, you can unlock and correct data. Now, if what you unlock is very significant, like you got married, you unlocked and you're adding your partner, and that partner is an adult, obviously, then that partner will need to be background checked. And so to an extent, there can be a delay on that. But if what you're unlocking for is to correct some small detail, that doesn't cause delays, and you should do it. And generally, the earlier you make that change, the better. Okay. Later in the year, I start telling people to not unlock and not correct certain pieces of data. And in general, there's a lot of things that people unlock for and try and correct that they really didn't need to correct. So, my answers tend to change depending on when in the year you're asking. But yes, your question is, can you edit it later? Yeah, you can. A lot of people rush the DS260 as soon as they're selected, only to realize that they've made bad mistakes and they need to correct it. Happens every year. I warn people to not do it, but it happens every year. So yeah, you can do that. What is the second draw for DV26? Please tell me, bro. Yeah, we don't know for sure yet. We'll know in about July or August whether it's likely to happen. And then if there is a second draw, it would happen in September or October. But based on what I'm seeing so far, it seems unlikely to happen. We'll have to wait and see. Right, case number is AF27X, good. 2026, give me everything, you see. Love that, Gracie. So I'm going to take time to answer your question. I do have a US visitor's visa. If I were to go and stay 3 months and file the DS260 adjustment of status from there, would that be a guarantee for a green card? It's not a guarantee. You're never guaranteed a green card in this process. Can you do what you're suggesting there? Yeah, you can do that. But under a visitor's visa where you only have 3 months, you've got certain restrictions. You can't work while you're here and so on. And you have to be careful with timing. And so it's a little bit dangerous from a B1, B2 to try and do adjustment of status because the timing is normally a bit out. But yeah, it's possible. You've got a nice low case number. And so, you could become current, go to America, pause a little bit, change your mind and decide you want to stay in America and therefore adjust status. Certainly all possible. it's doable. Do you need to, though, Gracie? Is that really necessary? Is there a reason why you're thinking you have to do that? Let me know. Ask me the question at britsimonsays.com. Okay. Got selected for DV26. Do I need all my documents before applying for the DS260, or can I start my application first? You can start it first. You don't need all your documents in place to simply enter the DS260. The only thing I would say is check your place of birth, usually on your birth certificate, because some people, strangely, find out they were born in a totally different place than they thought they were being born in, and so that's worth checking before you actually submit your DS260 so that you're accurate to the documents that you're going to be presenting. But generally, no, nobody's going to ask you for those documents until the interview date. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. My wife has selected with case number 10K. I don't know your year or your region, but never mind. I'll ignore that for the time being. We have 37 years old. We have a 2 diploma in cosmetology. 2 times 4 years education after college is good for USCIS. Okay. Okay, cosmetology is not likely to make you eligible via work experience, right? So your education has to meet the level required. This only applies to the principal winner, which in your case, you seem to be saying your wife is the principal winner. So she must have completed education to a level where she could have entered a university straight away with no further education between the two things. So it generally means the end of high school. It generally is achieved by about the age of 18, 17 sometimes, 18 typically. And at that point, your education, you might call it high school graduate or whatever. In America, it's called a high school graduate. But that high school graduate in America can immediately enter college, which is university, right? And so that's the point of education they're looking for. So if you only did high school until age 16, for example, then you're unlikely to have been allowed to enter university as a 16-year-old straight into university, right? Even if you did well in school, it's unlikely you would be passed on DV lottery because of the level of education that you had wasn't enough to go to university. Okay. Now, there are 1 or 2 countries where allegedly people there are fully educated to high school American standard level by the age of 16. Cameroon is the one example that springs to mind. I've always thought it was a bit weird, but it seems to get approved by consular officers. And so, I'm a little cautious to say you have to be 18, you have to be 17 or whatever. It may be that there will be some people under the age of 17 that finished education before the age of 17, and they are qualified for DV lottery. But it seems to be a hyper generous decision in the case of Cameroon, in my opinion. But it's up to the consular officers what they approve. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Just scrolling through to see if there's any more questions I can answer. Regarding dependee age, I filled DS260 today. I'm DV26 from Asia, candidate 6700. I will turn 21 in like 20 days. Will it have an impact in KCC verification or in the interview? Please tell me. Dependee. Okay. Yeah, you could have a problem. Maybe. So your Asia 6700. This is the important thing. There is, if you Google the words Brett Simon child turning 21, right, you'll get to an article where I've explained something called the CSPA, Child Status Protection Act, and how that is applied to DV lottery cases. You get a period of about 215 days added on beyond your 21st birthday, right? But the point at which you are 21 plus those 215 days roughly is important to consider against when your case goes current. So what you need is for your case to go current before you are 21 and about 230 days, because I'm adding the 20 days, right? So you'll need to go current before that date. If you miss that, even by 1 month, then your chance is gone. You can't be approved as a derivative child. But if you are less than that number, on the first of the month when that visa is available to you, which is determined by the case number, then you can get a chance. That's all much more carefully and completely explained in my article. So Google Brett Simon, child turning 21. Okay, it's a good article. It's accurate, and it's got links to a good place that the other thing with CSPA is the consular officers don't all understand how to apply it. So it's best if you print out some information so that when you go for your interview, you know that rule will be applied properly. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we'll probably call that time. Just looking for one last question. Can't see a good question. Oh, okay, this is a good question. For DV26, is social media history important to mention in DS260 form? Yeah, please do that. These days in particular, no one will believe you if you say you've got no social media history. Like you've had no social media channels, but you're a 25-year-old guy in some country. That doesn't make sense. It looks like you're trying to hide something, right? We all have social media profiles. And so you give those and be honest and transparent about it. And I'll be perfectly frank with you. If you've been on social media saying all sorts of negative crap about America, then that could be a problem for you, right? I mean, that's just the reality. They're already throwing people out of America for using their free speech in order to criticize America. I criticize America all the time. I particularly criticize Trump because he's a freaking idiot. But it unfortunately is a case that under Trump's administration, the words you use in talking about America and being critical of America have become more important. So be careful about that. But yes, in your DS260, give all your information. Answer every question in there completely. You should have your full address history, right? It asks for your history. Put your full address history, your full travel history, your social media history, your education right back to about age 12. It asks for all your secondary education information, right? People fill out their DS260s and put half an answer in there and then wonder why I later tell them, unlock your bloody DS260 form to correct it. It should be right. Okay. All right, everybody, we'll call that a day. Good question to finish on at the last point there. Thanks for joining me today. We did about an hour and a half of Q&A. I'm parched. I want to go and get some water, and no coffee's turned up. So so that's I need to go and get some coffee. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. See me next weekend, and look out for videos that I'll be publishing this week on various aspects of the DV lottery to help some of you DV26 people through. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye bye now.